Welcome to the PIO podcast, a place for everything public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local governments.
It was a good learning experience for a lot of us that social media is not real life.
But we have to remember the media are very rarely a target audience. They're simply that conduit.
Our words have impacts on individuals, and it may not be positive. So just being thoughtful and mindful of the words that we speak.
I think what's so interesting about this position too, and this job and this profession, is that every one of us is looking for purpose, and when we find it here, that's it.
To know is that a crisis for one is not necessarily a crisis for another.
Hello everyone, hope you're enjoying our content. If you would be so kind and click the link at the bottom of today's episode notes, your support in any amount will keep the podcast going. Whatever you can provide will keep the lights on and the podcast growing. So sit back and enjoy today's episode. Morning. Today on the PIO podcast, we will welcome Cynthia McLaughlin. She's the Public Information Officer for the Sarasota Police Department in Sarasota, Florida. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Robert.
Thank you. So you took over for, is it Genevieve Judge?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Great experience with her. I interviewed her, maybe 2 years ago on the podcast. So great interview with her, and she's just a wealth of knowledge. So I'm sure you had a lot of fun filling in for Genevieve.
Yeah, I mean, she built this whole department from the ground up, the department being the PIO office of the Sarasota Police Department. She did it by herself for almost 10 years, and she left really big shoes to fill. I was grateful that the city, finally allowed her to have some much needed help. I am sure fellow PIOs across the nation can agree that it's tough to be one person on call, ready to respond 24/7, 365, despite, your own life, holidays, living away from family, anything like that. So I came on January last year. So I'm coming up on a year and 8 months at the department, coming up on a year in the senior PIO role, but I came on as her assistant, tried to absorb as much as I could. She left way too soon, but thankfully she's not too far away if I ever need anything, but it's been great. And then I brought somebody in, so we've got 2 people and we're rocking and rolling. Awesome. All right. So before we jump too much into your background real quick, and I know where Sarasota's at, but a lot of people don't still. Where is it located at? What's the population, and what's your sworn civilian staffing like? Yeah, so Sarasota, Florida is about an hour south of Tampa. We are in their TV market DMA, though. So while we do have some hyper-local TV stations here in Sarasota embedded, we do also get those Tampa stations that are either have a bureau reporter here or they make the trek sometimes if the story is notable enough. Our population on paper, 57,000 here in the city of Sarasota, but anybody that travels through the city knows that the number is much greater. I think they did a study about a year ago and found that about 1.2 million people pass through the city during the work week. So wow. A lot of people on our roadways. Traffic is always a big buzzword around here, just from, this is a snowbird destination. So right now we're in off season, but once we get through that peak hurricane season, I mean, we have people that spend 6 months here. It's the price of paradise. We have to share it. We have 190 sworn officers budgeted, and our civilian professional staff is about 65 right now. Okay. So we're small but mighty. A lot of us juggle a lot. A lot of our patrol serve on a specialty unit or 2. So we get a lot done with the resources we have. Right. Well, and like any agency, everybody's short for people or even budget locked, and they can't do a whole lot with that. So Sarah, Cynthia, let's talk about your background. You were a former journalist, correct? Yeah. I did TV news for just under 7 years. I started in Bismarck, North Dakota. I lasted about 1 year there. Was it because of the cold? That definitely played a role. Yeah, I'm a Texas girl. I grew up in the Dallas Metroplex.
Okay.
Lived in Boca Raton, Florida, so on the east coast of Florida for a few years, and always just was itching to get back to the beach. When I left Bismarck, I was up there at a Fox NBC duopoly. I was education reporter and then weekend anchor producer. I came back closer to home. My grandfather was fallen ill, and I needed to be closer to family. Then I was in Tyler, Texas after that as the morning anchor, and I'd report in my free time, just like all these TV stations do. I was there for 3 years during the pandemic. It was tough. And actually, broadcast journalism is what brought me to Sarasota. So I was the evening news anchor at a hyper local station that's 2 blocks north of me right now, actually. Did that for about 18 months, did a story with Genevieve, and I saw in one of our TV reporter groups that she was hiring a PIO. I didn't go for it the first time, and I mentioned to her that I was like, oh, I wish I would have gone for it. And just by the grace of God or fate, I don't know, the person she was hiring, it didn't work out, and she reposted it, and it just felt like I needed to go for it. And now I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere.
Right. Well, you know what? It's a great transition for you guys in the news media, because there's a lot more stability with it. Obviously, if you have to move around, or if you want to move up in the news media, you have to move to a bigger market. So it's not very good.
Moves are expensive, and it gets old. It's exciting when you're young to move and try a new place, but I mean, those contracts, it's just stressful the whole time. And, just I feel like the PIO world's a little bit similar, but you're watching all of these stations cut back on staff, and people are getting paid less. The experience isn't there. People are stretched so thin. And I really needed stability was huge. My news director told me when I moved to Sarasota, I wasn't going to want to leave, and he was right about that. But I just wanted some roots, and I wanted a new challenge too. It was difficult kind of being a leader in the newsroom, and the people that were the supporting roles weren't really at the, I don't know how to say this properly, but they want that work-life balance that just wasn't even an option when I started out. So, you're saying when I started, I wanted to go run to that fire right after, even though I just clocked out, and they're saying it's my mom's birthday. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's a top story. Go get her.
Right.
Like, it's right there. It's an underhand, and they didn't want that. So, I want that for them, because nobody should be worked to the bone, but it was frustrating, trying to build a show with, just evergreen stories. I was hungry to continue storytelling, and I feel like I'm a bit more in control and can do that here, and just speak directly to our citizens without any filter or influence.
Right.
Aside from our own command staff, we're able to say what we have going on thanks to social media.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, you're obviously the lead PIO now, but you said you had an assistant, and you came in as the assistant to Genevieve. So let's talk about that. So there's 2 of you in the media relations department, or is that what you call it, or public relations? Yeah. So I'm the public information officer, supervisor, and she's our communications specialist. So, once Genevieve left, they opened her position. I put in for it. I did kind of, in the meantime, because there was nobody else, fill that role just without compensation. But, we had a lot during that time. We had a swearing in ceremony the day after Hurricane Idalia, which severe weather is kind of my bread and butter, just from the climates I worked in. Blizzards, tornadoes, you name it, here hurricanes. I'm ready to put my boots on and go play out there. And, I was going around with our traffic sergeant. He's also over our Marine unit as well. Just, road closures, flooded roads. We had a tornado in the middle of Idalia. It was wild. And then, even though you worked a 16-hour day, 8 a.m., we've got a swearing in ceremony that you have to film and take photos and set up and take down. So, sometimes it rains, it pours, pun intended. But thankfully, I got that promotion, and I'll tell you, it was tough to
find somebody to fill my old role, because again, it's just this position is so important in that you're ready to respond around the clock, and that's a hard sell for people.
Yep, it is. It's very tough. And it's, yeah, that 3 a.m. phone call is always the worst one, when you're just maybe you were not out, but you couldn't fall asleep, and then you finally fall asleep, and that call comes in, and you're like, oh my God, no. I've had those, I've had so many of those in my career that, it gets exhausting, but it's also makes the job really fun, and I find it's nice to have that opportunity to do different things and see new challenges. So you've been in this position, the PIO, head PIO position, a little over a year, correct?
Yeah, it's coming up on a year. I think I got the promotion September going into October.
Okay.
So
have you made
coming up on a year?
Have you made any changes or change process or added social media accounts, anything like that?
Yeah, that's kind of the exciting part about bringing somebody in after, somebody's been in the role for a decade. You get a fresh look, a fresh take on things. I've tried to keep our tone similar to how it's been, because I don't want to shock our followers that know us a certain way, but maybe I'll try a new thing here or there. Probably the biggest project that I've undertaken is our own podcast, Chat with the Chief. I'm actually in our new studio now. It was a supply closet a week ago. But, we make do. That's been really exciting. So when Genevieve brought me on, the chief, of course, he's like, I have 2 PIOs now. What can we do with more people? And it's like, we could just breathe, first of all, now that we have 2 people. But, of course, he wants to see new things. He's innovative. He's pretty new. 2-3 years as chief. He was interim for quite some time after that, but he's very pro communication. He loves social media. The podcast, he said, I want a podcast. And I was like, okay, so do you want to go on YouTube and talk about initiatives? He's like, no, I want to be on Spotify. I was like, okay. He's like, and I want it to be free for our citizens. I was like, we got it. So Genevieve said, you have fun with that. That's your first project. And I taught myself how to code an RSS feed. I found us a host platform that did have us for free, but now I think we pay, I think it's $12 a year, just so that our episodes stay permanently on the site. I think before they would expire after 90 days.
Right.
So we use Buzzsprout, but from the beginning, I was like, you don't want this film, do you? It would be really easy because we could put it on YouTube. And he's like, no, I want it audio only. That way the officers feel comfortable. But of course, it grows. And now we film it. Yep. We've got a setup with 3 cameras, all sorts of lights, the fancy mics, the works. And we've had some really, really interesting guests. And the reasoning behind it was we were hosting these town halls at our community center, and the same 3 to 6 people would show up with the same issues. And we're like, we need to reach more people, and we want to hear from more people. So this has been a tremendous success. Thousands of listeners that we weren't getting at town halls. People can listen to our messaging on their own time or while they're multitasking. It's been phenomenal.
Yeah, the podcast, since I started this almost 5 years ago, the growth really, I found when you start looking at the analytics in the background, you find people, it's the drive time. If you keep it in a certain length, it fits for the average person's drive time. Mm-hmm. And then at the same time, it like you said, it works for those multitaskers. They're doing work at home, or they're on their computer at work. They're listening to it in an earbud, and they can just hear it, and it doesn't take up massive amount of time, and it makes it enjoyable. Nobody's doing the Joe Rogan podcast at 3.5 hours on a regular basis. Not in public sector. No, never.
Yeah, our chief has never called himself Rex Rogan. But, no, I love that he dreams big. It makes my job exciting. He'll throw a big idea and trust us to implement it how we see fit, or we'll throw a big idea and he trusts that we have good judgment too. I'd say the other thing I've been sprinkling in is those really short form vertical videos, Instagram Reels. Those might not be received the best internally, but I remind our officers all the time, you're not our target audience. You know, we know that you're locking your car. We know that you're removing your firearm when you go to sleep at night. We're trying to reach somebody who's unlocked car's been broken into 6 times.
Right.
So these PSAs, we did one just kind of like a lip sync 7-second video, and it has 250,000 views in
Awesome.
3 weeks. It's crazy. It's crazy. But when you dive into, and I started as an advertising major, so I just kind of nerd out over analytics. But when you look into the attention span of people,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the watch time and the scroll rates are crazy short. It's difficult in this fast-paced world to make sure your messaging is being received and it's sticking.
Right.
So
if you don't have something that's a hook, like within the first 5 seconds of a video, it's gone. And
it's done.
Yeah, it's a done deal. So yeah, definitely, that's awesome that you got such grab from a video like that to have it go viral. That's amazing, and keep it up.
Yeah.
Those are great things.
And now, a word from our sponsor. In today's climate, you need to be able to communicate, whether you're communicating to those you serve, your peers, or your constituents. Whether you're looking for professional development or to work with a professional, John Guilfoyle Public Relations has you covered. From crisis communications to website development, visit our website at jgpr.net or call us directly at 617-993-0003 to get started today. We'll help you tell your story strategically. Now let's return back to our episode.
Did you add any other social media, or have you pretty much stayed with the same stuff?
We stayed with the same stuff. I think we made a Threads account. Actually, I know we did to claim it, but it wasn't included on Archive Social. So it's just we didn't want anybody else claiming to be Sarasota PD and doing who knows what with it. But we haven't really done that. Just other than, utilizing those podcast platforms. We stick with the big 3, the Facebook, X, and Instagram.
Right. Do you guys, as a department, do you use Nextdoor or anything like that?
We use Nextdoor. We have LinkedIn. Nextdoor, and maybe somebody listening can help me out, but I've found that it is not mobile friendly.
Yeah, they do have an app, but it's not the greatest. And
no, it can never use our area. It will never send a messaging. So I feel like if I ever had an incident, I'm usually going. So unless I have the information before I go to a scene, which is rare, it's useless.
I'll have to get you the link for the government liaison for Nextdoor, because he's really pretty helpful. I'll shoot you the link when I'll grab his email address and send it over to you.
Awesome.
So as a former journalist, and you've handled investigative reporting, obviously, now that you're on the other side of the mic, how do you balance as the public's need to know and maintain the integrity of an investigation and make sure that you're keeping the news media, on track when you're giving out information?
Absolutely. I feel like there's a few answers to that question. Sure. Probably one of my biggest challenges when I came on here was gaining trust internally, because I came from the media. So people think I'm out just to air investigations. They have their biases, and I understand that they have a right to have these biases towards the media. Maybe they've been burned on an investigation in the past, or something's been spun a certain way, and they have that distaste in their mouth for it. So just, getting to know people internally and letting them know I'm on their side now. This is where my loyalty lies, is within the agency. And this is who I work for now. I don't work for the media anymore. So that was step 1. Step 2 is, I think, from the public side of things, when we can't say everything 5 minutes after a call out, or, after we're dispatched, you've got to be consistent and have a reasonable timeline. And when you're, if you're not giving much information at the first hour, you need to follow up, and people need to trust that you will tell them when you can. I've seen some agencies where they wait until it's forgotten. And I think that, you just have to own it. Not any crime's going to occur.
Right.
And it's not us doing it, so we don't need to hide from it. And the more transparent, I feel like there's more trust, and you're keeping fear at bay.
And I agree. I think that's when usually you run into the big problem is when people start wondering, why is there no information coming out? Mm-hmm. And then they start to think, well, what are they hiding?
Mm-hmm, exactly. Or some small agency that has a mass shooting or something, and then you look at their feed and they haven't posted in a year and a half before that.
God,
that's horrible.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I use this when I do some training for FEMA. One of the things that I talk about is the shooting that happened in the St. Louis suburb there. That shooting where the agency was silent for 5 days, but then you go and look at their Twitter account and their Facebook account, and they weren't active pretty much a year prior to that. So you can't trust anything that comes out of there.
And then people don't know where to turn when something happens. People know if there's a backup on one of our main thoroughfares that we're going to let them know what's going on and where they should avoid, and we'll let them know when it's clear. I think the last is just relationships are crucial. Your media relationships are huge. It's a delicate dance to not overshare, but you have to have that trust with your hyper local reporters so that, I will get you that information, but you can't say anything yet. And they trust that I will let them know as soon as they can. Or, maybe there's an incident where we don't have a lot of information and they just happen to pass a scene with officers, which is crazy. A police presence.
Yeah.
in the city.
It's amazing.
There's a large police presence and it's 3 officers.
It's amazing those messages you get on Twitter or Facebook Messenger, and they come in and you're like, why are there so many squad cars there? And you find out it's an accident with 2 cars, and there's just one directing traffic and one doing the accident. I mean, it's not that bad.
Yeah, right. So, even if we don't have any information, I can't even say anything yet. I'll say, look, it's not a story. And they'll say, okay, I'll stay on what my current assignment was. And they appreciate that. They don't want to waste their time, sticking around at a scene that's a big nothing burger at the end of the day.
Right. And
they're doing their job too.
I have found that that's usually something I've kind of get them to read between the lines. So when I've talked to the media about maybe suicides, which is a common one, they'll call, oh, we heard there's a shooting with a death. And I go, well, this is an incident that you don't normally report on. And they instantly go, oh, okay, thanks. That makes life easy. I don't need to send a crew out. Makes it life.
That makes your life easier too. Now you can focus on the other 100 things you have going on. Those relationships are so important.
And I think trust and that building and that relationship building is really important. Have you had, now you had the relationship before, have you sat down with the media, kind of like give them an overview since you've taken over of like what, reaching out to you at certain, for things or not reaching out to you at certain times?
It's been on my growing to-do list to do now that I have my new communication specialist. She started about a month ago, so she's very new. But I've introduced her just from me doing, media interviews, but I'd like to sit them all together and say, and set those hard boundaries.
Right.
Don't call me about a fender bender at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, and I get they're doing their jobs, but just sometimes I think the precedent of just being super available, it could lead to burnout. And I don't want that for Monica, our new communication specialist that's coming on board, because this I'm used to it from media. There's no days off. You could be lounging by the beach and, if there's a big enough story, you're coming in. So I'm used to that culture, but no, that's a really good idea to bring them in. I think I got to meet them a lot when I came on board here. So I already kind of cultivated those strong relationships. And then when I'm on call, have those scenes where I'm waiting with them. But it really was kind of being thrown to the trenches when I started here, because I was a news anchor. So I was like chained to the desk, even though I worked in this community. I didn't get to meet anybody. I was stuck inside all the time. So it was nice to meet them, and Genevieve had such positive relationships with everybody. It really made it easy to like be welcomed into the fold, if you will.
Well, you're doing a great job. I mean, the podcast, that's awesome. I mean, everything that I've seen that you're doing, and that's the reason why I contacted you, is because I'm watching all this stuff you guys are putting out. I'm going, they're doing an amazing job. And I'm like, wait, this is Genevieve's old job. I go, who's doing all this stuff? And then I came across you, and I'm like, oh, I got to get her on the podcast, because you're doing great stuff. You're putting out amazing content, and it's informative content. And I think it's good if somebody wants to learn and see what is good. This is the way we do it as PIOs. We plagiarize, and we take stuff from other people.
Yes.
and reuse it. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Reinvent the wheel. We say that all the time. The chief says that. I think the relationships I've built from going to various conferences and trainings have been invaluable too. We follow a lot of other agencies to see what they're doing. I'll save posts all the time. Be like, that was funny. I don't know that we can go that hard in the paint, but I want to utilize that somehow. Right. I'll follow on my personal pages, even PR accounts, like one of our best performing like meme posts, PSAs, if you will. I saw Kava, this like build your own bowl place, posted like how to become a pita chip. And then the second slide on TikTok is, why'd you swipe? It's like, that's hilarious. How can we use that here? So I did how to speed without getting a ticket or without getting pulled over. And then why'd you swipe, and use that as a slow down post, and stuff like that just does phenomenal. People want that like tongue-in-cheek, like playful, when the time's right. Personality. We can't be rigid all the time. We've got to humanize the badge. We need to be accessible, and we don't want the only interaction a citizen has with an officer to be a bad one. Right. When they need us.
Right. Absolutely.
We want to be there every other day of the year too.
There is time to be very, very level-headed and very matter-of-fact, and then there's times they have a little bit of fun and make it engaging for the community, because that's how they come back to your content over and over. They want to see if you got something different, and you also want to keep that feed moving, so you've got to be able to put content out, and that's important. I think that's where PIOs from my generation, and obviously I'm a lot older than you, but we didn't want to do that because we were always worried that we were going to offend someone, and now the younger generation, they're a little bit more used to it. There's a little bit more social impact that way. And I think it's a good thing, because it's very important to find ways to get them to come back to you and engage.
Yeah.
So I'm asking this of all my guests on the show. Have you used any AI features like ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini to assist you in your job at all?
Yes, I use ChatGPT. I think if you're not utilizing these engines, you're missing out. It can brainstorm for you. It can, it speeds up your process. When we have a lot of different components of our job, I don't need to sit here and come up with, how are we going to do the lock your door PSA? I keep using that, but that's our hot topic right now. In the summertime, people leave their cars unlocked at the beach, but how can we get to them this time? Or I have this idea and I'm like, okay, this is where I'm starting. How can we run with this? And it's not a finishing point. Of course, everything needs to have it. It can't be copy paste. I don't think that's ethically good at all to copy and paste. And sometimes I can see agencies do copy paste, and it might be like a recruiting post, nothing bad, but I'm like, oh, I know, because it's a space and that star with the little dashes around it. ChatGPT loves that one. Or hashtag Florida's finest. I'm like, oh, they love calling officers the finest. You can tell that it hasn't run through human spell check, if you will, but it's been great. I used one last year, back to school. We were all over it. I had 2 posts a day, reminding people speed limits, talking about the ticket amounts. If that's the only way you'll slow down, then fine. Money talks. And I wanted to do like 'Twas the Night Before Christmas style poem with our points that we wanted to make, slow down, watch for pedestrians, watch for the stop arm of a school bus, leave your house early. But I wanted it towards the night before back to school. So I said, these are the points I want, make me a poem. And like that, it does it. That is crazy. Of course, I had to fine tune some things, but that would have taken me a week and a half to do.
Exactly.
And it was still my idea, and it got my messaging points across, but the whole darn thing rhymed.
Right.
That was crazy.
It's amazing how if you learn how to make the prompts in there properly, and you can at least get you get the framework of what you're looking for. And then of course you have to, like you said, you got to fine tune it. You can't cut and paste and leave the stars in there, because that's always for bold icon, and so I see them too all the time when people make their mistakes. But I interviewed a guy named Gregory Matuski. He's a PR guy out of New York. His entire firm has integrated ChatGPT into their firm. They actually have a press release program that's out there publicly, so you can basically put in what you want in the press release, and it'll write the press release for you. And then of course you've got to fine tune it, but it gives you everything you need in the right top to bottom, and very, very well written. So it's not like it's not what's a phrase, it's not computerized. It doesn't come off as AI. It comes off more natural. So, and he's offered that for free for people out there. So that his story's coming out next week on the podcast, but it's really what he's doing is some really interesting stuff with AI. They're talking about movies and commercials, and the stuff that they're doing is amazing. So
that's awesome.
In the next 5 years, 3 to 5 years, where do you see AI maybe having more of an impact on what we do?
Ooh, that's a good question. Misinformation always scares me. As being a news anchor and producer during COVID, that was tough.
Yes.
It's always a concern of mine. I worry, kind of like what we just talked about, some people might rely too heavy on it, whether because they're short-staffed or just out of, routine. And I think if that were to happen, the public would lose trust in us, which is the worst thing that could happen.
Yep.
My hope is that it continues to push us to be creative and innovative with our messaging, continue to humanize the badge in unique ways. But yeah, anytime you tread a new landscape, it's scary. Change is scary, but
yes,
it's exciting too. So it'll be interesting to see what all happens with it. But I just hope people, don't lean on it too hard.
It's a tool, and they have to remember it's just one of the other tools that we have in our toolbox, and you can't let it do everything, and you certainly can't cut and paste, and it does make mistakes. It does. And I've seen papers that were written and people submitted them, to be reviewed, and all the supporting information is all fake. It's not legitimate. It points to a site.
'Cause it's just utilizing the internet,
right?
To use its knowledge or whatever you feed to it, which is why it's so important to input as much of your own information as possible, or even give it the parameters to stick with this information. Don't, sometimes I'll use it for verbiage, like to make something sound a bit more formal or informal,
right.
Playful, plug some puns and cringy dad jokes in there, whatever it may be. But I know at Perf, what was that, May, up in Orlando, that's something that the chiefs were talking about. It was a whole day talking about AI, and I know something our chief came back with. He's all about it. He's like, just chat GPT it if he knows he's asking too much of me. He's like, just chat GPT it. I'm like, well, that's not how it works quite, but consider it done. He was able to, one of the issues we have here, he input all the data and said, come up with some optional crime plans. Like, what can we do with this? And it came up with some innovative ideas that maybe fell flat the first time, but were successful the second time. And just doing things differently. Sometimes you need a third party, whether it's a connection you've made, another PIO across the country. This is just another friend to have to lean on and step back and look at your issues and solve them for you,
Right,
or offer a new solution.
Yeah, it definitely does help you make a leap sometimes, which is a good thing, because you can be stuck into doing it the same way, or you just you're literally just you got so much going on, your brain just can't relax to generate new ideas, and it helps. I mean, it's amazingly, it does help. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Cynthia, is there a question I should have asked, and if so, how would you have answered it?
No, I think we covered a lot of great stuff. Just community's everything here. I think that was probably one of the most shocking things coming over here is the amount of community outreach that these departments are doing. And it's beautiful. It's what I lacked in news. I got to do a little bit more when I was on the streets, connect with people as a reporter. But once I was in the anchor role, producer roles, I didn't get that human interaction anymore. And I think how these agencies are utilizing officers too, full sworn officers, to attend those community events, neighborhood association meetings. We have officers, they started their own day of the week at our local summer camp. This is stuff that it's our job to make sure the public does know about, and that your reporters do know about, because, maybe they don't go so hard in the paint when something does happen, because it's not if, it's when. But you just got to make sure you have that trust and good news bank filled to the brim.
So you've really reached out to your officers to get them to give you that information back, because you're never going to know that unless a community member or the officer brought it back to you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thankfully, we do have community members that will brag on an officer changing a tire, stuff they would never ever tell us.
Right.
We had a city employee whose son is an officer. He was like, he saved all these turtles. I'm like, this is amazing. There's video,
God.
of course.
Stories like that are gold.
Yes, gold.
Yes,
gold.
gold.
And like, give me a kid, a puppy, and a patch, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I remember several years ago at my old agency, we had ducks stuck in a sewer. Little baby ducks, and the one of our CSOs and a civilian were using this little makeshift shovel to pick them up, and there's mom waiting outside, jumping up and down, and as each one came up, she was so excited, and somebody videotaped it, and it's on the news the next day. I'm like, dude, why didn't you tell me this? We could have had all this.
Yeah. They're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just doing my job.
Yeah, what am I going to do?
What?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think they know that means they have to do the interviews, but
exactly.
That's why they're like, shh, don't tell the PIOs.
All right, Cynthia, rapid fire questions. You ready?
No. Yes.
Texting or talking?
Talking, more specifically FaceTime. Once I moved around so much, I miss seeing people's faces.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Coffee or tea?
Celsius or iced green tea.
Adult drink of choice?
Right now it's rosé with jalapenos.
Oh, that's different. What? Sounds good. Okay.
It's good.
What would be your superpower if you could have one?
Mind read.
Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Neither. Beg for forgiveness.
PIO way. What place would you most want to travel to?
I want to go to Italy, like Amalfi, or actually anywhere in Italy.
Yeah. What's your favorite way to relax after a long day?
Rage at the gym, or watch like garbage reality TV.
There you go. If you could have coffee with any living or historical figure in the world, who would it be?
That's a tough one. Princess Diana.
Be a good interview. Cynthia, let's some final thoughts. What key points would you like our listeners to take from today's interview?
Just look out for yourself as far as, I think burnout's really real. We've seen how it's impacted the news industry. I don't want that to happen in our PIO world, because my eyes have really been open to how much responsibility for like the catch-all umbrella, from flyers to news releases to headshots to everything in between. Look out for each other, lean on your PIO neighbors in your immediate area, build those networks too, because, oftentimes we'll have investigations that cross jurisdictions or multiple agencies respond. It's better to know them already than to go hunt down their number. And some PIOs, might do a good job of hiding their direct line. Maybe it's their desk and they're obviously not at their desk, which we know why. But, you know, relationships are everything. That's what I've learned. I am very grateful for the networking I've made in the PIO world and outside of it, that I can call and lean on and ask for advice or a policy or whatever, or just ask for somebody else's judgment before I put something out.
Awesome. Cynthia, do you have a motto or a piece of wisdom that you live by?
I do. It's super cheesy, but I always say words are powerful. And I've heard myself saying that 100 times to our new PIO because, you know, I think COVID taught this to me, or instilled it to me. You know, you can say two things that are both true, but the way you say it can really impact the way it's received. You know, saying male versus boy, you know, teen versus boy, based on, you know, the circumstances or location. That's why these roles, I think, are really successful as a civilian rather than a sworn, because we understand as a citizen the way it will be received. Right. You know, and breaking down that officer jargon, which is great for reports, but it's our job to fine tune it and make sure that we're not being offensive, that we're being authentic, and we're considering people's backgrounds. So yeah, I always say words are powerful. That's a good way to live. How can people best reach you if they want to connect or follow up on anything or learn how you made that video go viral? I'm on LinkedIn, Cynthia McLaughlin. I follow our Sarasota PD pages. There you go. It's me behind the wheel. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter/X. Shoot me an email. My email is cynthia.mclaughlin@sarasotafl.gov. That's perfect. You don't need to add a phone number out there. No phone number. No, don't do that. It's out there already. Yeah, exactly. Cynthia, thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you. This has been fun. And that's Cynthia McLaughlin from Sarasota PD. That's all for this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified on the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows you to leave a review, please give us a review. Any review is appreciated. To support our efforts with the PIO podcast, you can click on the support button in the show notes, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you.